live, correct? All right. The floor is yours, Director Deere.
Do we have a quorum?
Okay, well, let's take a roll call, starting with Director Houston.
Here.
Director Williams.
Here.
Director Alvarez. Director Gray. And Director Deere.
Here. So we have a member and an alternate to make the committee have a sufficient for a quorum. We have a quorum.
All right.
Is there any public
Fantastic.
comment?
We
Is
have
there any
no
public
public
comment?
comments. We have no public comments here in the room, in the boardroom, and I'll check on the platform. And if there's anyone who would like to recognize themselves by raising their hands. And at this time, I see no hands raised. So it appears we have no public comments for today, Chair Deere.
All right, let's go. Are there any presentations?
We have no presentation scheduled for today.
All right. We'll go to the action calendar.
Okay, so on the action calendar, we have our Senior Water Policy and Resources Analyst, Mr. Matthew Gay, here to provide a presentation and a recommendation around adopting a resolution authorizing a grant application to the California Department of Water Resources for our Landscape Smart Outdoor Air Efficiency Program. So with that, Matthew, please.
All right. Thank you, Greg, and good afternoon, Chair Deere and members of the committee and board. I am now on page 3 of the agenda packet. I'll give you a moment to get there. And I'll just provide a brief background on this item. So staff is currently in the process of putting together and finalizing an application for a Department of Water Resources grant. This grant would provide funding for a new program that we're unofficially right now calling our Landscape Smart Outdoor Efficiency Program. This program would be strictly focused on outdoor water efficiency measures via turf removal, direct installation of water efficient devices, landscape and irrigation optimization services, design consultations, and a strong outreach and education component that supports these core programs. As well, there would be a separate outreach and education campaign focused on enforcing the ban on non-functional turf at CII sites and also getting those sites to remove their non-functional turf. The funding is being made possible through DWR's 2022 Urban Community Drought Relief Grant Program. And this grant program provides funding for projects in the areas of urban community drought relief, turf replacement, and conservation for urban suppliers. There's also some funding set aside in this program for underrepresented communities and tribes. The local cost share for the program is 25%, which is a really good cost share. Also, there is a minimum award level of $3 million, which means the total project cost would need to be at least $4 million. So in this application, West Basin is proposing to use in-kind services via staff time and resources, as well as existing Metropolitan Water District turf removal rebates to provide the local cost share. As a result, there would be no additional cost share from West Basin to support the proposed program. As is the case with many or most state and federal grants, there is a requirement for an organization's governing body to adopt a resolution, which does the following. It authorizes the agency to apply for the grant, and then if awarded, it would authorize the agency to execute the funding agreement and all related documentation. It affirms the agency's ability to meet the minimum local cost share, and it would allow the general manager to enter into contracts as needed. So to move into the next phase of the grant application timeline, staff is recommending the board adopt a resolution that meets the above objectives. A copy of the proposed resolution is provided on pages 6 and 7 of the board packet with additional information about the program in the memo. For the purposes of today's meeting, staff is recommending the committee forward the resolution for full board approval at the January 23rd board meeting. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to take any questions regarding the proposed program or the grant application.
Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair, this is Director
Hearing none, is
Houston.
there a motion? Director Houston, go ahead.
Sure, I have no questions. I just want to note on page 7 that our attorney's name is misspelled. So if staff would make sure they fix that before it goes to the board, and with that, I am okay. It moves forward with a yes decision, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Okay. Page 7, huh? Okay, do you want to make a motion then, since you are acting committee member, Mr. Houston?
Well, not a motion, just I recommend approval to the board.
Yeah, you're moving the recommendation, and I'm seconding it, and there's no opposition, and so we will pass it on to the board for their approval. We'll go on now to agenda item 6, information calendar.
Okay, so that takes us to our event director installation ceremony. And we have our assistant general manager, EJ Caldwell, here to guide us through this conversation. But I'll take a moment to highlight that this item was considered in the December 19th board meeting, where the board did provide direction to the general manager and staff, and efforts have been expended according to that direction, but new information was developed along the way, and we thought it would be appropriate for us to bring this back to the board or to this committee for additional input as we work towards coordinating a director installation celebration. So with that, let me hand it over to our assistant general manager to guide us through the discussion.
Hey, Mr.
Yes,
Chair,
thank you, Greg.
Mr. Chair, can I interrupt?
Who's that?
This is Director Houston.
Houston? You go ahead.
Sure. I just want to ask a staff a question. Is Chair Gray expected at this meeting or not?
Chair
You
Gray
mean the one we're
is-
having? Yes. You want to hold off for her input on this, Director Houston?
I believe so, because I'm just going to ask staff, is she here or going to be here?
I think if we want to, I'm sorry, Director Deere.
I was going to say the same thing you're going to say, so go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I think it does make sense to maybe hold off on this item momentarily to provide a little bit more time for Director Gray to arrive. I believe our board secretary has reached out, and I've also reached out. I have not heard anything in response, and the board secretary is indicating that she has not heard anything in response. But I think maybe out of consideration for the director, we could table this for now and go through the remainder of the agenda and circle back on this one once we're done with the other items.
There's no objection, so ordered. Let's go on to item B.
Okay, thank you for that. So we will move on to item B, and that is our legislative update. And we have Matthew who will provide that update for the federal, and EJ will provide the update for the state. Gentlemen.
Right. Thank you again, Greg. I'll go first, right, EJ? Okay. So the legislative update, federal affairs update this month begins on packet page 11. But I'll go ahead and have us jump to the federal affairs part, which begins on page 13 of the packet. So the first thing to report is that late last year, Congress passed and President Biden signed into law an omnibus appropriations bill to fund the government for the remainder of fiscal year 2023. While West Basin did not seek any funding in this year's appropriations bill, the omnibus does provide critical funding in a number of areas for drought and infrastructure projects that are much needed in California and the Western United States, as well as several community-based projects, also known as earmarks for California water agencies. which is how West Basin acquired funding for 2 of its recycled water projects the previous fiscal year, thanks to the efforts of our representatives at the federal level. This bill follows an already strong funding cycle that occurred with last year's bipartisan infrastructure legislation and the Inflation Reduction Act. On December 23rd, President Biden also signed the 2022 Water Resources Development Act into law, adding a number of new authorizations for environmental infrastructure projects. These are Section 19 projects, which includes $100 million for Los Angeles County. The Section 219 is the same authorization that West Basin has from the Army Corps for its Harbor South Bay project. Switching gears a little bit, as you have likely have followed, there's been some interesting events taking place at the beginning of this new congressional session. While Democrats maintained a slight majority in the Senate, at now a 51-49 number, the House shifted over to Republican control following the midterms. So with that shift, the Republicans needed to elect a new Speaker of the House. And since last year, it's been expected that Representative Kevin McCarthy of the Bakersfield area would be chosen for that position. However, again, if you followed this, it ended up taking 4 days and 15 separate votes from the House to finally elect McCarthy to the position. And this required him to make several concessions to some of the other more conservative members of the House. On the Senate side, things went much quicker and more smoothly, with the Senate electing Senator Patty Murray from Washington as the president pro tempore. She was preceded by Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont. Also in the Senate, Dianne Feinstein has not yet signaled her intentions for a potential 2024 election run, during which she would be 91 years old. But other possible successors are starting to make some moves pretty recently. Some of the names that have been mentioned in the news include Representative Adam Schiff from West Hollywood, who is in our service area, Representative Katie Porter from the Orange County area, Representative Ro Khanna from Santa Clara, and Representative Barbara Lee from Oakland. So kind of a split between Northern California and Southern California representatives. Those are just the initial ones that have indicated interest, and the picture is sure to come into clearer focus in the coming months. Also, just a reminder that Aqua's DC conference will be taking place at the end of next month. It's scheduled from February 28th to March 2nd. Registration deadlines are coming up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So if you are interested in attending and haven't already let staff know, please do let us know so that we can get you signed up. The conference will be held at the St. Regis Hotel, and the agenda is still being developed, but will likely include briefings on the drought, Colorado River, bipartisan infrastructure legislation, and Inflation Reduction Act funding measures, with representatives from President Biden's administration also expect to provide some updates. Also good to know for our upcoming DC visits is the U.S. Capitol has reopened with many of the pre-pandemic operations and processes back in place, with an important aspect being the House office buildings no longer require a staff escort to walk around. So the next time that we are there, it should be somewhat less of a hassle to move around in order to visit the various representative offices. There's a few other updates included in VSA's monthly report that you can read, but that concludes my report, and I'm available for any questions before I hand it over to EJ.
Are there any questions?
No question.
Well, thank you for the report. Thank you for the report. EJ?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Deere. I will begin the state legislative update, which has been provided to us by our state lobbyist, Neomel Pappas and Associates. It does begin on packet page 16. And the report begins with obviously the inauguration week. Obviously, Governor Gavin Newsom being reelected has taken this opportunity to really hammer home some of the policies that he ran on. And I think that if you look at the introduction of the board memo, he really highlights the historic nature of the January 6th history now, especially in consideration of what happened last year in our nation's capital. He stated that his swearing in would be a celebration of freedom, democracy, and diversity, and really stressed that the observance of the California spirit of opportunity and inclusion, the California way, that stands in peaceful contrast to the violent insurrection and assault on our democracy, which occurred 2 years ago. If you look at kind of the nature of the beginning of the 2023 legislative session, I think that each legislator is coming in with kind of that fresh new start, taking a look at several new issues. I do know that our very own Director Scott Houston had the opportunity to travel to Sacramento for the swearing in of those members of the legislature. Typically, when they do that, they all host individual open houses. Director Houston, I throw it over to you. I don't know if you have anything to add specific to that.
No, thank you, EJ. I would just say, yeah, I was fortunate to travel up to Sacramento and attend the swearing in, and I happened to be on the Senate side, with Senator Allen among others. But I think it was excellent to be there because we do have a lot of new members in both chambers. And so I was fortunate, as you mentioned, to attend a lot of those open houses and see a lot of the new members and returning folks, as well as starting to meet some of the people who are in their staffs. So for what it's worth, it was really excellent. So yeah, thank you, EJ, for pointing that out. I think that opportunity for us, whether it's the board members or staff, to go to Sacramento and be in person is very valuable. And, so it's good that we're getting back into real life again. And this is just such a critical time for us because we have so many new electeds that are representing our area and other areas that are going to be on key committees. So thank you for that, EJ. Thanks.
Not a problem. And given the choice, I think due to the political nature, the Senate side is definitely the side of the House to be on. And I'll touch on that in just a minute. But really looking forward to the 2023 year, there is an extremely tough road as far as our budget is ahead. It is expected that there would be a $24 billion deficit. That's in stark contrast to years past where we've actually had significant surpluses that have allowed Governor Newsom to work with leadership to really fund a lot of the key initiatives that they've set forth. Along with that deficit, California's public pensions are both posting negative returns on investments last year. And that, of course, gets everybody a little bit nervous about the years ahead, and sometimes and oftentimes requires the state to take corrective action. So we'll continue to follow that. As I just mentioned on the Senate side, things are quite a bit more settled. You do have that continuation of leadership with Senate Pro Tem Toni Atkins of San Diego. She did announce the Senate committee membership assignments for the 2023 and 2024 legislative sessions. And we do have that included here in the board memo. You can see that in the Environmental Quality Committee, there is our continuation of the chair, Senator Ben Allen, obviously representing a portion of the West Basin service area. Not much has changed in line of that committee. Over on the other side of the natural resources and water, there is a new chair with Senator David Min from Irvine. Obviously, West Basin is excited to work with that committee. They handle the majority of water issues that we're involved in. So it's worth noting that Senator Ben Allen also serves on that committee, as well as Senator Lola Smallwood Cuevas that represents Culver City, and of course, Senator Henry Stern, who represents the northernmost portion of our service area. On the Assembly side, where there's a little bit more of some politicking going on, it's worth noting that obviously we've continued on with Speaker Rendon, but there is an agreement as far as the Speaker-elect position with Speaker-select Rivas. And as such, there's a little bit of a negotiation going on in relation to the committee membership. However, it is noted here in the board memo that Assembly Member Alex Lee, Democrat from San Jose, will oversee the committee that handles drinking water issues, which is environmental safety and toxic materials. And then, of course, Assemblywoman Rebecca Bauer-Kahan will represent the Water Parks and Wildlife Committee. And she obviously is very involved in water issues in years past. So we'll continue to track that. At the bottom of, and we will send out the committee assignments once those are named in the Assembly. On the bottom of packet page 17, it's important to note that we've already started it from the state legislative purpose, tracking the December snowpack survey. Obviously, what we've seen in January really puts the data that we have from December really aside. It's amazing to see what has happened in just a short amount of time with the new atmospheric rivers and of course water supply. And in just the few weeks that we've been tracking legislation, which our current bill list is included as packet page 18 and 19, you can start to see some of those issues that are popping up. You do see Water and Wildlife Resilience Act of 2023, Assembly Bill 30, Atmospheric Rivers Research Mitigation and Climate Forecasting, Senate Bill 23, Caballero, Water Supply and Flood Risk Reduction Projects. Again, all of those are top issues and will be very much discussed in this next legislative session, especially as we look to basically fix a lot of the damage that was done just over the last couple of weeks and actually look to see how we can mitigate and prevent these disasters in the future. On the Senate side, there is Senate Bill 3, Senator Dodd. It's related to the discontinuation of residential water service under community water systems. This is a continuation of Senator Dodd's continued effort to protect ratepayers and of course those that are behind as far as their bills go. And so we're going to continue to track that as well. It is important to note that I know that staff has been reaching out to the board members to gauge their interest on the state and federal legislative trips. We have been looking at an April date. I think it's the week of April 23rd for Washington, D.C. because of that's our nation's water week as far as policy goes up in the Capitol. We've had members of our delegation actually ask if West Basin staff and our directors will be back there during Water Week. So we're excited to kind of work with all of you as far as scheduling that goes. On the state side, it's important to note that we originally were looking at February dates. In looking at the legislative calendar, I believe that the deadline for bill introductions is February 17th. And then, of course, on February 20th is our state legislative observance of President's Day. So it'll be shut down then. We'll be working with you. We'll be sending out additional emails with all of you to again gauge interest and see about scheduling. March might look like a better timeline if we're going to weigh in on some of those bills that get introduced prior to that deadline. So be on the lookout for emails from staff as far as coordinating those dates go. And of course, staff is happy to work with each of you individually to lock in those dates and get us on our way for our next legislative trips. So with that, Chairman Deere, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions?
Yes, this is Director Houston.
Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, EJ, thank you. And you did mention it. So February, the Sacramento trip is the dates we had are not happening. So you're looking toward March, correct?
I think that if we're going to weigh in on legislation, I think the March dates would be a little bit more fruitful. It'll place us in Sacramento with opportunities to actually weigh in with our delegation. So if we can make those dates work, obviously we'd like to, but of course staff is very flexible and happy to work at the board's direction.
Okay, well, no, that's good. That's why I was waiting for this meeting because I want to see what we're talking about for these trips because I hadn't heard the latest. So February, I think you're right. Push back out of February if that's what's needed into March for Sacramento. And then for DC, you just mentioned week of April 23rd. Is that what I heard?
That is our nation's capital's water week. And in working with VSA, they've asked if we would have interest in visiting during that week. And again, VSA has expressed their willingness to be very flexible with us, but we would need to work with our admin staff to get those dates out to you to see how that would work with you. But it is a very relevant subject matter. During that week, you will see several of your different co-agencies there. And speaking with Pete Evich and Jeff Bowman, at this time, they don't have any other clients coming in during that week. So they would be very free to work with us. So it's really up to the director's availability.
Okay. Now Now, mind you, we had already looked at potentially the week prior, which was the 17th.
That's correct.
And also of note, on the 24th is our board meeting at West Basin, which potentially we'd have to adjust, and we've done it before. I'm open to both weeks, both options, and I know you all will reach out to us, but at the same time, what I wouldn't want to have happen that week of the 24th is if we just got lost in the shuffle with other agencies, not with our own lobbying firm, but if there's just a lot of other water people in town and we're just like one of many, I don't know if that's, a good or not, but what's your thought on that, EJ?
Well, again, we're happy. We were looking at that original, the week prior, because we do know that members of Congress will be in session. They'll be there in Washington, D.C. That's the most important aspect. So we're happy to work with you either of those weeks, and we can make either work.
Okay, well, like I say, I'm open-minded and I appreciate VSA, however, they'll work with us on it. So obviously you got to circle back with the directors who plan to go. I would ask that we try our best to get something soon settled on the calendar, because again, like all of you, I'm planning my next couple months. And so these things that are up in the air are getting to be a little challenging. And one last thing on the Sacramento trip, you mentioned that Senator Min is chair of Natural Resources and Water, which I think is great. And I would ask that if there's a way to reach out to his office and perhaps fit him into our schedule, if it's going to work when we're in Sacramento, EJ, because he's chair, I think that would be really good. And then also I see on that list is Senator Laird. So I would just request that we could reach out to his office too. And if we're able to meet with him even for a few minutes, I think that would be very valuable. And last but not least, as you're putting together the roster of folks, we do end up meeting in Sacramento. As you know, sometimes we divide and conquer. So I'm sure you're going to come back to us with the roster of everybody we're going to try and meet, and then we can perhaps, whittle something down if we need to, or again, divide and conquer. So, but I want us to look at meeting with those two senators as well, since they're both key to that committee.
Will do.
Okay, great. Thank you, EJ.
Hello.
Any other questions or comments? Director Gray, welcome aboard, Director Gray. Hello, Director Gray.
I apologize. I had an emergency this morning, but thank you for going ahead with the meeting.
Well, we're glad that you were able to join us.
Thank you.
We're now on agenda item 6C, 2022 Legislator of the Year Award. Who's going to handle that?
Okay, thank you for that, Director Deere. So welcome, Director Gray. Thank you for joining us. We have Director Houston and Director Williams here as well. So great to have you join us.
By the way, I'll turn my chairmanship over to Director Gray.
Oh,
Okay, so
thank you, Director Deere. But go ahead, please.
okay, so we're and I presume there's no additional discussion of information item 6B. So as Director Deere indicated, we're now turning our attention to item 6C, 22 Legislator of the Year Award. We have our Matthew Bay, who's ready to provide that presentation. So Matthew, please.
Thank you, Greg. So we are now on packet page 20. And so I think, as everyone knows, West Basin has a history of recognizing the efforts and successes of its state and federal representatives through our Legislator of the Year Award. On pages 22 and 23 of the agenda packet, you can see a list of all the previous legislators that West Basin has nominated for the Legislator of the Year Award. Unfortunately, due to the impacts of the pandemic and the difficulties or near impossibilities of visiting legislators in person during much of that time, the Legislator of the Year program was temporarily suspended in 2021 and 2022. However, Now that things are returning back to normal, we've had a number of positive legislative outcomes that occurred in 2022. And since we do have lobbying trips to Sacramento and Washington, D.C. that are coming up soon, we figured it would be a great time to reinitiate the Legislator of the Year award process. So as has been past practice, staff does have some recommendations for you to consider as part of your larger discussion. We believe a few of our representatives really stood out for their work over the past year that really benefited not only West Basin, but our communities and really the water industry as a whole. So if it pleases the committee chair, Chair Gray, I'm happy to go through our recommendations for this year's awards. Otherwise, I'm happy to turn it over to the committee members to weigh in and discuss with each other their own thoughts.
Why did you go through the recommendations that we can get feedback and suggestions from our committee members? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair Gray. And just to say this up front, there's plenty of deserving folks from last year's legislative session, but we really think the following people are strong nominees for your consideration. So last year, West Basin had a huge win by securing nearly $4 million for its recycled water program. And this was really due in large part to the advocacy efforts of its congressional delegation. These projects were included as congressionally directed funds, again, earmarks, and each legislator was only given a limited number of projects they could champion that year. And we were humbled to have both of our recycled water projects included on those lists, which ultimately made its way onto the appropriations bill that was passed and signed into law by President Biden. So on the federal side, staff is recommending Representative Maxine Waters and Senator Alex Padilla, both for a 2022 Legislator of the Year award. Representative Waters, Representative Waters was instrumental in securing the $3.8 million for the North Gardena and Mills Park recycled water lateral projects in 2022. She and her staff were great to work with, and we think she is highly deserving for this year's award. Likewise, Senator Padilla, as a relatively new senator, had a lot of potential projects and programs to choose from for his funding priorities. So I think the fact that he championed the inclusion of both of our projects was really encouraging and appreciated. And again, we think he's also greatly deserving of this award. Through the work of both Representative Waters and Senator Padilla, West Basin is now very well positioned to move forward on these two projects in the near future with significant federal government funding support. So now moving over to the state side, there were several bills that West Basin supported last year that ultimately were passed and signed into law. However, we believe a couple of those bills stood out for us in terms of their impact and importance to the agency. On the state side, staff is recommending Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel from the San Fernando Valley and Assemblymember Reggie Jones Sawyer from Los Angeles. We believe Assemblymember Gabriel is deserving of an award for his work on getting AB 2142 passed and signed into law. AB 2142 removed one of the disincentives of turf removal programs by exempting turf removal rebate recipients from having to pay state income tax on the rebate amount, which will have a net positive effect on West Basin's grass replacement programs. Because our program is one of our core water conservation programs, his bill will make a difference for years to come. The other state legislator that I mentioned for your consideration for this year's award is Assemblymember Jones Sawyer for a bill he championed last year, AB 1655. AB 1655 added June 19th, also known as Juneteenth, as an official state holiday in California to commemorate the end of slavery in the United States. This was a monumental bill that was strongly supported by the West Basin Board of Directors, and its passage followed the action taken by our board last June to officially recognize Juneteenth as a district holiday. It is a bill that reflects the diversity and values of West Basin and the community that it serves, and therefore we believe Assemblymember Jones Sawyer's efforts to usher this through the legislature last year is worthy of recognition through a Legislator of the Year award. That completes our list of staff recommendations. We appreciate you hearing our thoughts, and we now turn it back over to the committee chair, Gray, and the rest of the committee and board members for further discussion. And as always, we're happy to answer any other questions that you might have for our team.
Thank you for the recommendation. let's get feedback from the committee. Director Deere, are you the other member of the committee?
Yes, and I think those were excellent recommendations, and I support them.
All right. The question is, are you saying that we can have 2 people for each category?
So,
Question.
I didn't hear the answer.
Chairwoman Gray, you can see in the board packet, I believe we have a list of past winners that we've recognized previously. West Basin has taken a very open approach to our Legislative of the Year program, oftentimes recognizing a number of different legislators depending on the year. Obviously, we work with our entire delegation and members outside of the delegation, so it very much varies from year to year. In this case, we thought that we had a number of very specific actions that we thought we could and should recognize, and that was the basis for those recommendations. So the answer is yes, we could honor multiple winners.
Okay, great. Let me get feedback from the other committee, from the other board members. I'm not sure who's on the phone. I'll go to Director Williams. Are you on the phone?
Madam Chair, I'm here and I support staff's recommendations. They sound good to me.
Great. Director Houston?
Yes, I'm here and I fully support these recommendations, and I also think we should add a couple more folks to this roster. Because if I think about not just the ones that in the last year or so have been very helpful to us, but even over the pandemic timeframe where we didn't get to honor some folks. So if it pleases the committee, what I would look at adding, and I think Maxine Waters is fabulous. She was so supportive this cycle, as well as Senator Padilla. But I would add Senator Feinstein. Obviously, she's just been a huge champion for California. More than likely, she'll be retiring, and I think it would be very worthy of us to present her with an honor once more. I would also like to add Grace Napolitano, of course. She's, again, same story, champion, and I don't know how much longer she's going to stick into staying in Congress, and I think this would be a great time to honor her once again. Our local Congressman Ted Lieu, and as EJ knows, he has, carried the water for us, right, EJ, when it comes to letters and outreach. And so I think he would be worthy this cycle once more. And in the Assembly, the only other name I can think of, top of mind, is Laura Friedman, Madam Chair, because, she's obviously been a leader in water in the Assembly and continues to be. So I think that on top of Mr. Gabriel and Mr. Jones Sawyer, I think Laura Friedman would be nice to honor again. So those would be my only recommendations, would be those additions. Otherwise, I'm very pleased with what staff brought us. Thank you.
All right, well, thanks for that input. Is Director Alvarez on the line?
No, he's not, Chair Gray.
Okay. When was the last time that we did this award? What was the time, the last year or the year that was pending, and we did not do anything?
Madam Chair, we most recently took this action in 2020 for Legislators of the Year for the 2019 legislative year. So during the pandemic, we did not take action. And so we are bringing this program back as it's been very fruitful, I think, to West Basin and our relationship with our legislators.
Yeah, I just want to know the last time we did it. So it was 2020 for 2019. So there are a number of years that we did not do this because of the pandemic. So what I'm suggesting, because I like what Director Houston recommended those folks, and I think since we did not do this in 2021 for 2020, we could say 2020 through 22 or whatever the time frame, which would cover 2 years, and acknowledge those that the staff has recommended and those others that I believe that Director Houston mentioned, certainly Senator Feinstein and Congresswoman Grace Napolitano, and Assembly Member Laura Friedman. The only other person I'd like you guys to consider, the board to consider, would be Sydney Kamlager. I know she was chair of the LA Caucus, and water was one of the issues that they did. That was one of the items that they did discuss, and I know Sydney was the head on that. So maybe I should ask our staff: would Sydney, the senator there, would she qualify? And can you tell me some things that she may have done specifically in water in terms of our acknowledging her? I know she's going to Congress, but Sydney just came to she just came to my mind.
And that, of course, is not a problem. She's been very helpful to us, actually, prior to serving in the legislature. And of course, now we'll be working with her in Washington, D.C. as well.
Yeah. So that's the only other suggestion. So let me get the response from the board. Director Deere, what's your thoughts on what I just said, suggested, and what Director Houston suggested?
They're both good suggestions, but I think we're getting the list. It's a little bit too long, in my opinion.
Okay, but remember, we're doing 2 years, not just the 1 year like we usually do.
I understand that, and that's it. Perhaps we could separate the group.
Yeah, that's an idea. We could do that 2021 and then 21, 22. So that's an idea too. Director Williams.
Yeah, I like the idea of Director Houston of adding, of course, adding Congressman Liu.
Oh yeah, Lou. He was one of the other folks too.
Yes,
Okay.
and
So you were in agreement with the other suggestions also.
yes.
Okay. All right. Director Houston, Director Deere suggested separating with the years, which we could also do that. So do you have any other comment?
I guess, however, staff wants to figure that part out, because I know 1 year we just honored almost everybody in Congress that represent our area, so we actually had a bigger list. But for what it's worth, I also love your idea of having our now Congress member Kamlager added, Madam Chair, because yes, she was very supportive while she was in the Senate, and now she's gone to Congress. So I think that's a great suggestion, and I support it. And it also gives us another reason to talk to her while we're in Washington, D.C. I know that she's reached out to me, and we're definitely interested in working on some water things going forward. So for what it's worth, yes, let's add her, and I think we have a good roster right here.
Okay. So we have Congressman Liu, Napolitano, Kamlager. We have Assemblywoman Laura Friedman, and the staff recommendations. Did I leave off anyone?
Senator Feinstein.
Senator Feinstein. And how, if the staff wants to say 2021 and 21, 22, whichever format the staff, agrees to it, Director Deere make that suggestion, which is a good one, but it will cover the 2 years, and that really, allows us to look at multiple ones, even though we've done that in the past.
Sounds good.
So, committee, Don, you okay with that, Director Deere? With that direction
Yes.
to the staff? Okay. Staff, is that understandable?
Yes, it is.
All right. And thank you so much, very much. So we can move on to the next item unless there's something else in this item.
Madam Chair, this is Greg. Just wanted to be clear. So do we need to move a specific list to the full board at this moment?
Staff will bring this back as an action item with this recommendation along with the additional legislators for action by the full board.
This is an info item.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is the committee, so we can only make recommendations to the full board. It has to be an action item by the full board.
Correct. Yeah, this is an info item today. Okay, fantastic.
Right. This is just direction to the staff to bring back the full item with this direction.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, Chair Gray, we did hold off on info item 6A, which involves the director installation ceremony in deference to your arrival. And so we went forward with item 6B and now 6C. And so I would like to defer to you on whether you would prefer we continue with 6D or circle back to 6A at this moment.
Why don't we circle back to 6A, please, because we do need to provide some direction on that one.
Okay, fantastic. So with that,
Yeah. And Grant and General Manager, we did receive the written report, so we can look at the report and see all the information. So you could be brief in your presentation because we do have the written report. Okay.
okay, well, with that stated, I perhaps if it pleases the committee, we have the written report. It has a number of options in terms of venue and cost and availability. We do have some additional information here at my side regarding availability for the Carson Community Center for a few dates in February. And we also have a list of dates available for the Proud Bird in February. So that's added information that's here by my side, should the committee want to consider those. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Madam Chair, to discuss the report and the options with your committee.
Thank you so much, General Manager. First of all, thank you for staff for doing all the research, General Manager and staff for that and providing information to the committee. I think the date that we had looked at before probably is not a good date because we have not identified a venue. And so we probably should look at another date in February so we can have that discussion with the rest of the board. Also, I think everyone has before you different venues. And so why don't we start that discussion about the venue? So let me go to the Director Deere first.
I think the EC Little Plat idea is probably the most economical.
Okay, just to confirm what that cost would be, Greg, could you tell us again what that cost is for the EC Little Plat?
With the EC Little, our previous experience was to utilize tents to provide an outdoor space that would accommodate a larger group rather than the indoor space, which is the Learning Center. And I believe that this event was for the grand opening of the Learning Center, and the costs at that time were $55,000.
Okay, what is
We
the
don't
cost?
need
What's the capacity of inside the center, and also the cost for that? What's that capacity?
EJ, if I can ask for you to provide the indoor capacity of the Learning Center, the WEC.
Correct. It definitely depends on the configuration of the room. You'll notice that we've had several events inside there. When you put those round top tables there, it does take up quite a bit of space. I think the maximum occupancy is approximately 75 to 80, but once you add those tables in there, it shrinks up considerably.
Okay, so it would have to be outside. And what was the arrangements before for how many people for the event that you just mentioned that was $50,000?
I'm not exactly sure about the total number of audience members. Obviously, when we're dealing with open space, we can pretty much accommodate any crowd. You've seen our parking lots. We do actually have an expanded parking lot now. You might recall that a number of years ago, I believe it might have been your first or your initial swearing in. We did host an event there with a large tent in what was our older parking lot. The expense of those tents is considerable. Obviously, that's a significant piece of those costs. And that when you talk about the outdoor events, that does weigh in on the costs along with the construction of the stage. You're basically building it from scratch. And that's the reason for the $55,000 rough estimate as far as hosting an event outdoors.
May I interrupt?
Yes,
May I interrupt,
Director Dier.
Madam Chair? Yeah, my
Yes.
idea was it was going to be inside. It was going to be inexpensive. So I withdraw my proposal for the NC Little Platte. I like first of all, I'd like to know how many people we're expecting, and can we fit them into, now the dates have changed, can we get the Carson Community Center? So it's two
Well, let
questions.
me-
How many people are we expecting, and can we get the Carson Community Center?
Well, Director Deere, let me just respond and then the rest can respond. There are 3 board members that are part of this installation. So, and I believe, and I don't remember how many people were told to the general manager in terms of capacity, but if just one person has 100 people, that's 300. It certainly would be over 75 in terms of capacity. And I saw
Right.
Carson Center was 213. As a 2-something on that list. So, I think we need to look at a venue based on how many people, and I agree with you. So let me add, the Director Williams would be installed. So Director Williams, what's your estimate of your guest list?
Oh, I haven't looked at that, but
Just a guesstimate.
whatever it was 3 years ago.
Okay, then we'll have to defer back to GM with that. And then Director Houston, what's your estimate?
Well, I think the rough estimate's what you said, Director Gray, like it just if each one of us had 100 people here and there, which it's not hard to do. I know people think that's hard to believe, but it's not hard to do to have 100 people in our universe to come. So there's 300 people. And the other thing is that it's not an exclusive event, obviously. So, we have to post it publicly and we can't turn anybody away. So if I recall, 4 years ago when we did this, and it just happened to be at Carson Community Center, but I'm not in allegiance to any location at this moment. But, we had 300 or 400 people show up, and I don't believe it was an issue. So anyways, to your question, I think, we have to plan for, a pretty decent turnout to show up. 300 people probably.
Yeah, and I would say for me, probably 100 people, and it's not too hard to get that kind of turnout. So, Mr. General Manager, was there a capacity level that we gave you before?
It was exactly what you're saying now, which is 100 guests per director plus additional arrivals above and beyond the 300.
So that would be probably between 325, 350.
Correct. We're planning
Okay.
between 300 to 400.
Okay, well, that eliminates some of the venues on that list. It eliminates the Yola, the Youth Orchestra in Inglewood, because I think their capacity was 2-something. I haven't confirmed that, but that's what I was initially told. And the Carson Community Center did I see on that list 2-something also?
My understanding is that there was a bigger venue at the Carson Community Center, but it does say here 220. But as Director Houston mentioned a moment ago, the past celebration at Carson Community accommodated, I think Director Houston, you said more than 300 people.
Okay. All right, and we don't know what that, I'm sorry,
Well,
go on, Director.
That's okay.
Houston.
Sorry, Chair Gray.
Go on.
I don't remember how many people showed up last time. I would imagine our staff probably has some sort of records, but what I was going to say, I know when we spoke at the meeting on the 19th, our staff said that they could accommodate around 400 people, but this report says 200 something. So I'm not sure what they can really accommodate, quite frankly. So I think we're back to square one a little bit here, Chair Gray, on looking at these venues that can get the right size amount of people accommodated.
Yeah, I'm just trying to eliminate them each. So I would, and SoFi Stadium is on there, and I think we should look at SoFi Stadium. Because what was the capacity at SoFi Stadium?
Well, the location that's listed here, and there were 2 locations available. This particular north level concourse, 500 guests, is what we're showing here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then Carson Community Center, we're gonna check that out for the larger room there, because I know it holds a lot of people. And we have to look at the cost too, because it's different than what is showing on that chart, right?
And Madam Chair, this is EJ. I can add, my understanding is that the 220 that's indicated in the board memo for the Carson Community Center, that is for the Dominguez Ballroom. You might recall,
for
if
the
you've had a chance.
So I'm
If
sorry.
you've had a chance to, oh, I apologize.
Go on. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have interrupted. Go on.
If you've had a chance to attend the event, the South Bay Cities Council of Government and their event, there is a larger ballroom that's the community hall. It's a much larger venue and can really accommodate any amount of people that we would like to be there. We did, I believe, host the event at the ballroom last time.
Okay. Well, could you, Greg, could your staff research that and see what that cost would be for the larger room with the catering, the
Absolutely.
food, and the cost, and then look at SoFi again in terms of now you knew before, but see if that's what I saw is 20,000 catering and 10 room. I don't know. Is the 10 part of the 20,000? I don't know. Is that just separate? Is 10 for the
Those are
cost of
separate.
the room?
Those are separate.
Yeah.
So you would be looking at 30,000 for SoFi.
Right. So look at Carson. And so let me hear from Director Williams. Did you want any other area looked at?
No, I'm just a little disappointed that we're here having this kind of discussion when we had this event in Carson, 4 years ago? And it worked out real well. That should have been the starting place. Because we have 3 directors are being installed. We should, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer that we should have started with that. So I don't know. I'm just disappointed to the point that I'm disappointed. Thank you.
Are you disappointed because we're looking at other venues?
Well, no, it's just that we are doing it now. This should have been done a long time ago. We knew this was
Well,
coming.
yeah, but staff
So-
did look at those venues that are
No,
listed
but
there.
not at the right time. It should have been done a long time ago. There's going to be, we know there's going to be 3 directors. So anyway, I'm whatever you come up with, I'll be disappointed with, but I'll attend. Thank you.
Well, don't be disappointed because I'll credit the staff. Staff did look at those venues, even though it's kind of late in us, making a decision about them or whatever, bringing it to the board to do that. But they did a lot of research on it. So now we got to pick a date.
You're being way too kind.
So let's pick a date, you guys. So, Director Houston and Director Deere, what do you guys think about those 2 venues?
Well, I like the idea of the Carson Community Center now, Madam Chair, because I do remember that we had plenty of room, and they've got the large room. I don't know why staff used the wrong ballroom to do the comparisons on, but we could do it at the Carson Community Center. It's local. and it's not as expensive as some of the other venues and so on. So that's my recommendation.
Okay, Director Houston, because you're one of the folks who will be sworn in. What's your thoughts?
Sure, thank you. No, I really have the same thoughts we're at now. So looking at the Carson Community Center, looking at SoFi just to see what it is. I have no issue with that. I would, just for argument's sake, or if you need to as a backup, or maybe the committee can entertain it, there's always the Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center that may accommodate. I think our challenge is, we need to find a date, and we need to find that works for all the board members, and then turn around, we've got to find ways venues available. I feel like Director Williams, I'm very disappointed at how this has all come together. I know, in my opinion, we're very late to this party, if you will, and it's slipping into February, but I know we will get it figured out. So I think these are the two venues, and maybe if you have a need for a third backup to explore, the only one I can think of in this area is probably that Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center, or we'd have to look at some high school location. But some of the other ones that were on here, I don't think would be very good either from the past. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, staff, so let's look at the two venues and compare the cost and everything. Director Houston gave a third one. If you're so inclined to do that, you can look at that one. But the main thing are the two ones that we mentioned, and Director Houston just gave another one. But we do need to we have to decide on the venue very, very soon. So let's pick a date now. So obviously it has to be in February.
Madam Chair.
Go on.
Madam Chair, I apologize for interrupting. I just wanted to add, we do have staff that is monitoring this meeting online, and we are trying to get you the best information that we can. I wanted to note that when we looked at the Carson Community Center, the larger hall was not available per the dates that were originally provided. And that was the reason for the shift into the Dominguez room, which again had a maximum capacity of 220. We are happy to look at additional dates and check, but I did want to note, as it sounds as though you're going to transition to selecting a date, is that's been one of the issues that staff has been finding, is that as we look at the preferred dates, which I believe it was originally asked to host it on a Thursday and or possibly a Wednesday, but focus in on Thursdays. We've been looking at those potential dates and reserving those accordingly. And so we're happy to follow up back with the Carson Community Center to look at the hall, but we would need to find the dates in which those are available. Obviously, SoFi Stadium had availability, but it's worth noting, and I think Chairwoman Gray, you mentioned this, the facility usage fee is $10,000, and the food and beverage, that's a minimum. So it would be required that you spend a minimum of the $20,000. So I wanted to note that. And then last but not least, just to Director Houston's request, staff did reach out to the city of Redondo Beach. They oversee the Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center. And at that time, it was not available. But as we start to look at February dates, maybe we'll check back in with them to see maybe if something like that would work.
Do we happen to get a cost for Redondo? Yeah.
Thank you for that information, but I think it was your point that staff had looked at Carson in terms of the larger room and it wasn't available for the date. Is that why you made the comment?
That is correct. That is correct. We do have dates that are available or tentatively available for the Carson Community Center Dominguez room or ballroom. But as it sounded as though you were going to transition to selecting a date, I was going to inform the committee and board that though it's great to have the preference of the dates, it's really the availability of the venue that kind of dictates these things. And we would bring that back and see if that's okay with you. But we're happy to do it as you would direct.
Hello, I didn't hear you. I lost the audio. Hello?
Hello. Hello.
I lost the last part. I didn't hear you.
You want to?
I apologize, Chairwoman Gray. My point in making this comment was that it sounded as though you were hoping to select a date. And I
Yeah, oh,
was
yes, right.
pointing out that in doing so, it's very difficult to secure the location with only one date. It might be best suited for us to focus in on what I'm hearing is the Carson Community Center, the large ballroom, to find
Right.
out when those dates are available and report that back to the board. That would allow for the quickest response as to the availability of the Carson Community Center. And we can do the same thing with the SoFi Stadium. We can find out exactly when that's available and get that to you, looking for the earliest date potential for your review.
And that is exactly what I'm asking the board to do right now.
Okay.
So let's go back to dates. Is there any, and we're looking at a Thursday, so we agree it should be on a Thursday. Is that correct, board? If not, anyone can speak up from the board. So we're looking at a Thursday, correct? All right, with that being said, is there any particular day in Thursday that someone wants to throw out and let us check our calendars right now? And we need 2 dates to 2 Thursdays in February. So are any of those Thursdays okay with the board? That would be February 2nd is the first Thursday, February 9th, February 16th, February 23rd.
23rd wouldn't
So-
work for me.
Oh, so what about the 16th?
16th is, that's a problem too.
Yeah, this is
Why
directed-
Thursday? Why does it have
We
to be on
don't-
a Thursday?
We don't have to have it on a Thursday. I just said
Right.
anyone that doesn't want a Thursday to say something, so it does not have to be
This
on a
is Don. Yeah,
Okay.
I've got service club meetings I have to skip if it's on a Thursday, so I
on
prefer
Thursday.
you don't have Thursday.
So,
Yeah.
so you want to do Fridays? Want to look at Fridays?
Any
So
Friday
we
is
have-
okay.
This is Director
That's the
Houston.
earliest- Yes. go
Director
on.
Houston. And I know we've done it on Friday in the past, and I'm open to other days too. I will just say Friday the 3rd, I'm not available, but all the other Fridays in February so far, I'm available.
All right, what about Friday the 17th? That would give staff at least 3 to 4 weeks, if not February 10th.
February 10th would work better for me.
Okay, so how many weeks out staff, Mr. General Manager, would that give you guys enough time to plan if we choose a venue this week?
Well, I think
Yeah.
if you're giving us the flexibility of picking between the 10th and the 17th and the 24th, that'll give us 3 dates to coordinate with the venue. As the Assistant General Manager indicated, the more flexibility we have, the better chance we can align your availability with the venue's availability.
Perfect, okay. All right, so we're holding those 3 dates in February on Friday, starting with the 10th, 17th, and 24th. So please hold those dates, board members.
Yes.
And staff, when will we be able to hear back from you in terms of the information? Do we have another committee meeting starting next week? What can-
We
what can-
have F&A next Wednesday. We could potentially bring this back for F&A, provided we're able to post the results. Is it already too late? We cannot. Maybe we have Steve O'Neill, our attorney, on the line. Steve, would it be possible for us to bring this item to F&A for consideration?
Yeah, yes, the answer is yes. You could bring it there for consideration and then there'd be, because I think we have good participation at the committee meetings because they're special meetings as well. So if a director has an interest who's not on F&A, that director could attend and offer input. So the short answer is yes.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
And so
let's-
with that,
Greg, can you put it on the agenda, check with whoever's chair of finance and make sure it can go on the agenda. And if you could provide us an email to the board prior to that with when you finalize to get the information on the venues, if you can send out an email to us so that we'll have that information ahead of time, if you would, if you can.
Absolutely. And we have the
Okay.
chair of the committee on the line with us now. That's Chair Houston.
Sir Houston, can we put that on your agenda?
Absolutely.
Hello? Okay, so now you have permission to put it on the agenda. It will be on the agenda on the 18th. And we will consider and you'll send out information. I'm sorry I have to leave at 2:30, so that's why I'm kind of rushing, but is there anything else on that item?
From staff perspective, I think we have good, clear direction. And if
Okay.
there's no further discussion among the board, we can move on to the next item.
All right, please move on. Thank you thanks, board members. Thanks, staff too. And Mr. General
Thank you.
Manager, go on.
Okay, so that brings us to item 6D, information calendar. And so that's the Greater Los Angeles Integrated Regional Water Management update. And we have our Assistant General Manager here to provide that update. And if it pleases the chair, we can roll right into our next item, which would be 6E, the Metropolitan Water District updates as well, which the Assistant General Manager will provide.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much, Greg. I'll just be very brief on item 6D. This is an item that Tammy Hurley-High, our water policy analyst, has briefed the committee and the board on several occasions, but we wanted to bring this to you just for a quick update. It is related to the California Greater Los Angeles Integrated Regional Water Management Program update. This does begin on packet page 24. You can see here that, and just as a reminder, the last July, our board, the West Basin Municipal Water District Board of Directors, adopted a resolution approving the 2017 updated Greater LA County Integrated Regional Water Management Plan. This was in contemplation of funding being available to the region. Ultimately, a total amount of $3.43 million was allocated to each of the GLAC subregions, including the Lower Santa Monica Bay. We've mentioned to you in the past, the West Basin Municipal Water District has included 2 projects within the GLAC, Greater LA County Integrated Regional Water Management Program, one of which is the Harbor South Bay Water Recycling Project. We did request $1.3 million. This is intended to couple with our funding that we got through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to help buy down our portion of that project. The remaining funds that we're seeking is for a drought resilience water conservation and landscape project. And for that project, we are seeking $630,000. This is a partnership with the Las Virgenes Municipal Water District. The one thing that we wanted to bring to your attention is that as we begin to move forward, West Basin is working with the Greater LA County area. And as such, we did amend the agreement for the grant consultant. This just happened, I believe, 2 months ago. Your board approved that as well as the contract administrator for the grant writers for the Greater LA County area. And staff brought this written item to you to highlight the fact that staff is currently preparing the necessary documentation on both of these projects for the grant application. It is estimated that a cost for each project application is $5,313.88. As such, West Basin would be obligated to pay this fee for the Harbor South Bay Water Recycling Project application. For the Drought Resilience Water Conservation Landscape Project, West Basin will be obligated to pay $1,771.29 for its share of the joint project. These funds are available in the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget, and it is anticipated that the Department of Water Resources, once the application is filed, would be ready to make their final recommendations for grant awards by spring 2023. So we wanted to bring that to your attention because things are moving forward very quickly with the grant consultant. But again, West Basin staff feels very confident that we'll be awarded through these efforts for both of these projects. And at the direction of Director Williams, you will see 2 project maps, site maps included in the board packet. And those are on packet page 27, as well as packet page 28. So that concludes my report on item 6D.
Thank you, EJ. Are there any questions?
Nope.
All right, can you move on, please?
Happy to do so, Madam Chair. The next item that we have for you is item 6E. It is our monthly Metropolitan Water District programs update. Again, Tammy Hurley-High is not with us today, so I'll be doing my best to present the talking points that she has assisted me with. Obviously, I won't do as great of a job as she would, but I'll try to do my best. The Metropolitan Water District program update begins on packet page 29 of the committee packet. You'll begin with kind of I think the most newsworthy item, which was Metropolitan Water District's adoption of a resolution declaring a regional drought emergency. This did occur last month. The board took an important step and adopted a resolution to declare a regional drought emergency. Despite efforts that have been made so far, additional actions are needed in order to manage and preserve both State Water Project and Colorado River supplies. In California, a state of emergency exists in all counties due to severe drought conditions. The Colorado River system reservoirs are at their lowest levels since their initial filling. Without additional action, Lake Mead elevation levels are projected to decline further. Listed in the memo are actions that Metropolitan Water District and its member agencies have taken since 2021. Metropolitan Water District has been managing their supplies by withdrawing them from storage accounts and pursuing water transfers. A call to action is needed now for agencies to implement voluntary demand reduction programs. It's very important to note that West Basin Municipal Water District, along with the Metropolitan Water District family, has been leading the charge, not only with the introduction of water recycling into our water supply portfolio, but West Basin and our member agencies and communities are now utilizing a water demand far below their average, and actually we believe have hit historic lows as far as water demand goes. The annual progress report for these efforts are underway as Metropolitan Water District continues to look at these things, but it's very important to note that as we're all celebrating the precipitation, both snowpack as well as rain and stormwater throughout California and into the Colorado River Basin, that important decisions and key decisions need to be made in order to balance those supplies. It's worth noting that we could actually see additional water supply come down through the State Water Project while actually reducing our supplies available off the Colorado River Aqueduct. So while we're excited to see the precipitation throughout California, it is worth noting that as we enter into the spring, we're still going to need to make sure that we utilize water efficiently and decrease our demand whenever and wherever possible. The next item I wanted to highlight is the annual progress report to the California State Legislature on achievements in conservation, recycling, and groundwater recharge. Metropolitan Water District submitted their fiscal year 2021-2022 annual report to the state legislature on achieving water conservation goals, water recycling, and groundwater recharge. During last month's water policy or water planning and stewardship meeting, Metropolitan held a public hearing to review the report, which summarized the region's achievements. A final report will be submitted by February 1st to the California State Legislature. For more information on the annual report, a link has been provided in the board packet, and you can find that on packet page 30 for your review. The next item that we wanted to highlight is Metropolitan Water District's new committee structure. We wanted to make note that or bring attention to Metropolitan's modified standing committees and establishment of new ad hoc committees. The new structure includes 4 board vice chairs who will be tasked to focus on specific areas. The changes also include an additional at-large elected member of the executive committee. The meeting schedules will be different as the standing committees will be held on concurrent schedule in pairs. In summary, there will be a total of 7 standing committees in addition to the executive committee. These include 1, the executive committee, 2, the engineering, operations, and technology committee, 3, the finance, audit, insurance, and real property committee, 4, legal and claims committee, 5, legislation and regulatory affairs and communications committee, 6, ethics, organization, and personnel committee, 7, One Water and Stewardship Committee, and 8, Equity, Inclusion, and Affordability Committee. Lastly, we wanted to note that on packet page 30, there's a detailed list of how the committee structure has been changed. With board meeting actions included in the board report is a summary of the items acted on during the December committee and board meetings, along with the summary of the board member vote results for December. As far as the look ahead goes, that begins on packet page 31, but I would be remiss to not note that here in the beginning of January, we did see the chairman-elect, Don Ortega, was sworn in along with all of the committee and vice chairs of the Metropolitan Water District Board, and a reception was held in his honor at Metropolitan Water District. In addition to the items listed, I'd like to also provide you with information regarding a special workshop scheduled next week on Tuesday, January 17th from 9:30 to 11 a.m. There'll be a board workshop to discuss items related to the Colorado River resources and supply. I can't understate this enough. This is a crucial issue for Metropolitan Water District as they negotiate with several of the other Colorado River water users. And of course, the states of Nevada and Arizona. Ultimately, we hope to see Metropolitan Water District and the state of California come to an agreement with all those parties involved. And hopefully, this workshop will help outline the issues and allow us to discuss those further. The water supply update is included as far as attachment C. Due to recent storms, the graphics are currently showing more improvement, particularly for the Lake Oroville Reservoir. We did have the opportunity to have Metropolitan Water District staff join us at last week's MWD caucus meeting, where more detailed report of the recent storms were provided. But at this point, we'd like to wait till we get additional information and updates before we begin to discuss the water supply conditions, because they've drastically changed since the information was included in the board packet. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
Good report.
Maybe I can ask the Assistant General. Madam Chair, if it's okay, I'd like to maybe ask the Assistant General Manager to also talk briefly about the request we received from you in terms of support going forward for the our Met representatives on the West Basin Board. So EJ, if you may.
Yes, thank you very much, Greg. As we did prior to the chairwoman or serving as chairwoman of Metropolitan Water District, West Basin staff was always available to review and provide summaries of the MWD agendas prior to the committee and board meetings. West Basin staff has continued to do that over the years, but we'll be scheduling meetings with our Metropolitan Water District representatives prior to the committee and board meeting. Those presentations or those summaries will be emailed out to the full board. And I have been working with our staff, Tammy Hurley-High, as far as the development of those to make sure that they're ready. Prior to the COVID pandemic, West Basin staff would do these presentations in person before the West Basin's MWD caucus. But at this point, we're happy to do it at the convenience of the directors.
So thank you for that, EJ. And so we're happy to provide that requested support and have that level of engagement with our representatives to the Met Board. So thank you for that request, Director Gray.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Is there another item?
I think that concludes the information calendar. And so the next item would be closed session, which we have no closed session items for today. And then that takes us to director comments and future agenda items.
Director's comment?
Yeah, this is Director Houston, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just want to say thank you to staff for the work that is going on and your updates. And I would like to request going forward on this committee If we could get an update regarding Measure W, those committees, and EJ, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't West Basin sit on 2 or 3 Measure W committees in our region?
We sit on 2.
2, okay. So what I would like to ask is if you all can provide us an update on the activity of those committees going forward, because now I'm starting to get a lot of questions from local electeds about stormwater capture and about some of the different things going on. So I think it'd be really good for our board to be informed on the activities so we can be a resource. And then turn around, we can also, of course, direct those folks toward your, our office over here to get firsthand updates. But I feel that we've been a little bit out of the loop. And so I think that would be a good thing for us going forward. So don't those committees meet once a month?
I think they're intended to meet at least once a month. However, depending on where they are in the funding cycle, sometimes it skips a few months here and there. I think the bulk of the work, if I was to summarize, obviously you go through this process of requesting regional projects. And again, I guess I would back up and just highlight, this is for the regional aspect of those stormwater projects. The individual municipal projects are handled by each of the individual cities. But on the regional projects, ultimately there's a call for projects. Once that's received, you start to get some applications in, and then the committee reviews those applications ultimately for a decision, for a recommendation to the Ella County Board of Supervisors. So staff is happy to bring forward an update on the current and most recent activities of those watershed steering committees.
Okay. Yeah, I think what I would ask would be, why don't we put it as a standing item on this committee if the chair is okay with that? Because even if there's not an update that month, at least it's on the agenda that if you have something to tell us, you can tell us. So I would ask that be considered going forward. Thank you.
Right, Director Deere, are you okay with that request?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Yes, we can add that. Thank you. Any other comments from board members?
Was that Director Williams barking?
That's my dog.
Oh, okay. Are we adjourning?
All right, my comment is thanks staff for all their work today and the general manager and for the board's participation. And if there's nothing else, is there anything else, general manager?
No, that takes us to adjournment. Whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you very much. All right, thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, and happy MLK holiday on Monday.